You won't believe what happened at Roberta Flack's funeral when Reverend Al Sharpton took the stage at Abyssinian Baptist Church. The room fell silent, but it wasn't just another eulogy. It was a message that left some in tears and others in shock. What did he say that had the entire congregation hanging on his every word? And why is this moment sparking so much conversation? Let me tell you, this is deeper than you think. Roberta Flack, the legendary singer whose voice touched millions, was more than just an artist. She was a voice for the unheard and a symbol of resilience. Her passing marked the end of an era, and when the news spread, fans and celebrities poured in with heartfelt tributes. But what stood out the most was Reverend Al Sharpton's powerful eulogy that turned grief into something much more profound. As the historic church filled with mourners, the atmosphere was heavy with emotion. People from all walks of life, including musicians, activists, and longtime fans, gathered to pay their final respects. Large portraits of Roberta were placed at the front of the church, capturing her radiant smile and the deep intensity that made her music unforgettable. The sound of a gospel choir softly echoed through the space, setting a somber yet soulful tone. People clutched the funeral programs, some wiping away tears, others lost in quiet reflection, reliving memories her music had given them. Then Reverend Al Sharpton entered, and the energy shifted. Heads turned as he walked towards the pulpit. Everyone knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary farewell. Sharpton, known for speaking the truth without fear, was about to deliver something that would leave a lasting impact. The choir fell silent, and the faint rustling of tissues was the only sound in the room. Sharpton adjusted the microphone, scanned the audience, and took a deep breath. "We are gathered here today not just to mourn, but to celebrate a woman who changed music forever," he began. Roberta Flack was not just a singer, she was a storyteller, a revolutionary in her own right. The congregation murmured in agreement, with quiet amens echoing through the pews. This is where it gets interesting. Sharpton's words weren't just about remembering Roberta's talent. He spoke of her struggle, her fight to bring Black stories to the forefront through her music. She sang about love, pain, and resilience, he said. And in a world where our stories are often silenced, she made sure we were heard. People nodded, some with tears streaming down their faces. The emotional weight in the room grew heavier with each word. But here's the shocking part. Sharpton didn't stop at honoring her legacy. He turned the moment into a wake-up call for the music industry and the Black community. "Let me tell you something," he said, his voice thick with passion. Roberta Flack didn't just sing for fame. She used her gift to heal, to teach, to speak truth. But now that she's gone, who will carry that torch? The room froze. People shifted uncomfortably, some lowering their heads in shame. What makes this story different is that Sharpton didn't just speak to honor Roberta. He spoke to challenge everyone in that room, from the celebrities in the front row to the ordinary fans in the back. Our culture, our stories, our music, they're being watered down and sold to the highest bidder, he said. If we don't step up, we'll lose everything our legends like Roberta fought for. The crowd erupted into applause. But beneath the claps and cheers was a deeper sense of responsibility. People weren't just mourning Roberta Flack anymore. They were realizing the weight of the legacy she left behind and the duty to protect it. And just when the room thought they'd heard it all, Sharpton dropped a bombshell that left everyone stunned. "Roberta saw this coming," he revealed. "She once told me that a day would come when real music, real stories, and real art would be in danger, and that day is now." The air grew heavy, and a chilling silence filled the church. People exchanged glances, some shaking their heads in disbelief. Roberta Flack had predicted this moment, and now her words echoed through Sharpton's voice. As the congregation sat in stunned silence, Reverend Al Sharpton continued with a fire in his voice that couldn't be ignored. Roberta Flack didn't just sing "Killing Me Softly" or "The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face." She sang from her soul, from her experiences as a Black woman navigating an industry that tried to silence her. And yet, she stood tall, she fought back, and she created timeless music that told our stories. People nodded, some wiping away tears, others clapping softly in agreement. The energy in the room was shifting from sorrow to something deeper, awakening. Sharpton's eyes scanned the room, locking in on familiar faces from the music industry. "And where are those who once stood beside her?" he asked. "And where are the executives, the producers, the radio hosts who once played her records but turned their backs when the world changed?" The audience murmured. Some looked around awkwardly, while others lowered their heads in shame. The truth was uncomfortable, but it was undeniable. Sharpton wasn't just speaking for Roberta. He was speaking for every Black artist who had been used and discarded by the industry. Roberta Flack gave her voice to the people, but the industry stripped her of the recognition she deserved in her later years. He continued, "How many more legends will we lose before we wake up?" A ripple of agreement swept through the crowd. People like Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight, and even younger artists like H.E.R. and Janelle Monáe listened intently. Sharpton's words weren't just about Roberta anymore. He was speaking about the erasure of Black excellence and the need to reclaim the culture that Roberta and others had built from the ground up. Then Sharpton shifted his tone. His voice softened and he spoke directly to Roberta's family, who sat in the front row, their eyes red from tears. "Your mother, your sister, your friend, she was a warrior. And while her body may rest, her spirit lives on in the music she gave us. But it's up to us to keep that spirit alive." The crowd erupted in applause, but Sharpton wasn't done. He turned his attention to the younger generation. You, the ones who stream music on your phones, who create beats in your bedrooms, who sing on social media, you are the future. Roberta paved the way so you wouldn't have to fight the same battles. But if you don't protect this legacy, her fight will be in vain. Tears flowed freely now, not just from Roberta's family, but from fans who felt the weight of his words. The air was thick with emotion, a mix of sadness, anger, and a newfound sense of responsibility. People weren't just mourning Roberta Flack. They were waking up to the reality she had fought against her entire life. Then, in a moment that no one expected, Sharpton stepped down from the pulpit and walked toward the family. He placed his hand on Roberta's sister's shoulder and said, "She's not gone. She's in every note, every lyric, and every heart she ever touched, and we will make sure her voice never fades." The church erupted in standing ovation. People hugged, cried, and cheered. But beneath the applause was an unspoken promise, a promise to honor Roberta Flack's legacy and to never let her voice be silenced again. As the applause slowly faded, the atmosphere in the church grew heavier with reflection. People weren't just mourning Roberta Flack anymore. They were confronting the harsh truths that Reverend Sharpton had laid bare. Whispers echoed among the pews as old memories resurfaced. Memories of how Roberta had been cast aside by the industry she once ruled, how her soulful voice was gradually drowned out by new trends, and how her contributions were quietly erased from mainstream recognition. In the front row, Roberta's longtime friend and collaborator, Donny Hathaway's daughter, stood up. With trembling hands, she clutched the microphone and said, "Roberta was more than a singer. She was a storyteller, a fighter, and a symbol of resilience for every Black artist who dared to dream." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "I remember how she fought for creative control over her music, how she stood her ground when record labels tried to mold her into something she wasn't. She taught us that success without integrity is empty." Her words struck a chord with the crowd. Artists who had faced similar struggles nodded in agreement. Some whispered to one another about the injustices they too had endured. Contracts that stripped them of ownership, radio stations that refused to play their music, and an industry that thrived on Black talent but rarely gave credit where it was due. Then, from the back of the church, a man in a faded suit slowly made his way forward. It was an old producer who had worked with Roberta in her early days. His face was wrinkled with regret as he took the mic. I was one of those who turned away when the industry decided Roberta's sound was no longer marketable. I watched her struggle to stay relevant, and I did nothing. Today, I stand here not just to honor her, but to apologize for being part of the machine that silenced her. Gasps filled the room. The honesty in his words was raw and unexpected. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats, realizing that this wasn't just about Roberta, it was about an entire generation of Black artists who had been cast aside once their voices were no longer profitable. Reverend Sharpton stepped back up and placed a hand on the producer's shoulder. "It takes courage to admit the truth," he said, "but the true tribute to Roberta won't come from words, it will come from action. We must change the way we value our artists, protect their legacies, and ensure their voices echo through future generations." The energy in the room shifted once again. What had started as a somber funeral had transformed into a movement. People felt empowered, ready to reclaim Roberta's legacy and fight for justice within the music industry. As the choir softly sang "The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face," tears flowed freely, but this time they were not just tears of sorrow. They were tears of awakening, of unity, and of hope that Roberta's fight would not be in vain. Outside the church, the crowd gathered in clusters, their conversations buzzing with renewed energy. Journalists scrambled to capture the moment, eager to document what was becoming more than just a funeral. It was turning into a historic reckoning for the music industry. Among the attendees was a young, up-and-coming artist who had been heavily influenced by Roberta's music. She stepped forward, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I wouldn't be here without Roberta's courage. She paved the way for artists like me to be authentic and fight for creative freedom." Her words resonated with the younger generation, many of whom had faced similar battles against industry control and exploitation. As the hearse slowly rolled away, an older musician who once toured with Roberta shared a chilling revelation. Roberta knew this day would come. She often spoke about how history would eventually expose the truth. She feared her legacy would be buried under the weight of commercial greed, but she also believed that her voice would rise again through those who truly understood her struggle. This revelation sent shockwaves through the crowd. People began sharing stories of how Roberta had secretly mentored young Black artists, helping them navigate the pitfalls of the industry while protecting their creative integrity. Some recalled how she turned down lucrative deals that demanded she compromise her sound, while others spoke of her quiet battles against executives who sought to strip her of her artistic rights. Reverend Sharpton stood on the church steps, watching the unity that was unfolding before him. "This is Roberta's true legacy," he said, his voice echoing through the streets. "She didn't just sing songs, she awakened souls. And now it's up to us to ensure her spirit lives on in every note, every lyric, and every fight for justice in the music world." In that moment, something shifted. The funeral became a rallying cry, not just for Roberta, but for every Black artist whose voice had been stifled and erased. People pledged to honor her memory by demanding fairness, fighting for ownership of their art, and protecting the next generation from the same injustices. As the sun began to set, a group of musicians picked up their instruments and played one of Roberta's most iconic songs, "Killing Me Softly." The melody floated through the air, carrying with it the pain, triumph, and resilience of a legend who refused to be forgotten. As the haunting melody of "Killing Me Softly" echoed through the streets, people swayed with closed eyes, feeling the depth of Roberta's soul in every note. Tears flowed freely, not out of sorrow, but from a deep sense of awakening. In the crowd, industry veterans began to reveal the hidden battles Roberta had fought. A former producer stepped forward, confessing how record labels often tried to silence her powerful messages on race and justice. "She was a warrior in disguise," he admitted. "She refused to let her music be diluted. Even when they threatened to blacklist her, Roberta stood her ground." These revelations ignited a wave of anger and determination among the younger artists present. One rapper who had faced similar struggles spoke out like, "We've been living in the shadows of these same systems, but today, Roberta's spirit gives us the strength to break free." In the midst of this emotional storm, a mysterious figure emerged from the crowd. An elderly woman, dressed in elegant black with dark shades, approached Reverend Sharpton. Whispers spread as people speculated who she was. With a trembling voice, she revealed herself as one of Roberta's oldest confidants. "Roberta knew this moment would come," she said. "She told me that when the world finally sees the truth, her voice would rise again." Her words sent chills through the crowd. The tension in the air shifted as people realized this was more than just a tribute. It was a revolution. The media cameras captured every moment, broadcasting the raw emotion and unity that Roberta's legacy had sparked. Reverend Sharpton, moved by the energy, raised his hand to quiet the crowd. "Let this be a turning point." Roberta's fight was never just about music. It was about justice, freedom, and truth. We must carry her torch and demand change in this industry and beyond. The crowd erupted in applause, chanting Roberta's name. Musicians began composing impromptu verses, blending gospel, jazz, and hip-hop in a powerful tribute that shook the very foundation of the city.